Hello. I made it. I thought I was going to be in a presentation or a meeting, but it turns out I wasn't. So at the last minute, I was able to make it to do the stream before the thing. So welcome, 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 welcome. I see Shachar's already in the chat. I don't know who else is here. Probably nobody. I just started, and I made this video, or I made this event at the last minute. So in the rare case that there is somebody who's new, who's in here already, I'm Tristan. Hello. I see ItGam's already here. And Hell Fox Fox. So a lot of the usual suspects. And yeah, so this is the countdown stream for this week. And basically, for those who are unaware, this is basically where I hang out with viewers for an hour leading up to the release of a new Step Back video every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, at least for the foreseeable future, unless something comes up. And the reason why this showed up at the very last second was because I thought I wasn't going to be doing this stream today. I thought that I had a thing I had to be at, or a thing that I had to telepresence myself at anyway. But then it looks like they forgot to Skype me in. So here we are. Yeah, this is the time where it seems I hang out with European teenagers and Shachar, who's in Israel. So what's today's video? Today's video is actually going to be quite different from my regular stuff. It's about Walt Disney. It's going to be about Walt Disney and the Disney Corporation. I'm curious as to how it will do. It's me trying to break out of a mold. All right, you're 22. Never mind. I'm wrong. I apologize. So this will be something a bit different. Disney. Yay. Ducted Stephen. Hello. What's up? So this is so this is a complex, or this is a weird. I thought I was going to prep myself for doing this all day, but I wasn't. So I'm kind of like slow and lethargic. Should have drank more coffee. Anyways, hello, friends. For everyone coming in, I see there's 11 of you now. Anti-Disney. Well, yeah, it's talking about how Disney's got quite a checkered past, and I think you'll like it. I think that it does a lot of stuff, and it talks about a lot of fun things. Other things that I have coming up, for those who don't know, Subscriber Appreciation Day on Subscriber Appreciation Day on the 28th of February is going to be a stream with Mexi, YouTuber extraordinaire. And so it's going to be fun. I hope you guys are excited for that. Get hyped. Hello, Mr. Shepard, and hello, Diadze. I don't know how I'm a bully, but whatever. Oh, goodness. Mexi is, when it comes to stuff about Marxist theory and political economy and stuff like that, is way smarter than I am. And that will be a video. So Mexi is she's a YouTuber who she also has a PhD, or she's finished her PhD. I have not. But she has a YouTube channel where she talks about political issues of today, but she's really well versed in Marxist theory. She's read way more stuff than I have, and her stuff is really good. But her channel is like woefully undersubscribed. She's like a YouTuber for YouTubers. Like all of her fans are YouTubers on other channels, and so she has a lot of high-profile friends and ends up in a lot of places. But she's really smart. probably one of the smarter like people when it comes to marks and stuff on YouTube. I can't think of anyone who's more well read. So that's who Mexi is. And I'm excited to talk to her because not only is she a really amazing YouTuber and has a lot, knows way more than I do on some of these things. She's also very local. We've never met, but we live in the same city, which I think is kind of cool. What's your take on the current situation in Syria? I don't know. It's kind of in flux right now. So ISIS is pretty much done. ISIS is pretty much relegated to being a paramilitary, like, you know, terrorist group, basically. And at the moment, it's sort of the fate of what's going to come out of what's going to come out of the Syrian civil war. And there's a lot of powers at play. You have like Russia, who wants Assad to be in power. You have Turkey, who recently sent troops into Syria in order to suppress the Kurds. There was a Kurdish anti-Turkish protest that went right by my apartment a few weeks ago. And you still have like the pro-Assad forces. You still have a bunch of rebel groups. Again, it's very similar in my mind. I guess like the hot take that I would make is the situation seems very similar to the breakup of Yugoslavia. There was a big country that was artificially roped together with a whole bunch of tiny, different, you know, national, ethnic, religious, and tribal groups, and they are now just broken. Now they're like the strong man has been challenged, and now you have a fight over who is going to come out the other end. And I don't know. Do you want a name that you can say? Don't I just call you Shachar? Like that's the way it's spelled on Curious Cat and stuff. So, sup, Ace? Whew. Sure. What is the meaning of that name? Why not? For you guys in the chat, this is someone who has this is a young Israeli man whose name is in Hebrew, and he's been dying to teach me Hebrew so that I can pronounce his name correctly. Dawn. Okay. So so Dawn. That's all right, Ace. You're not missing anything amazing. This is just me chatting with people. So the way that this chat usually works is that I take questions from the chat and I go on like long, rambly things and hopefully get through them all sometime before the hour runs out. Okay, I just finished watching The Cynical Historian on Woodrow Wilson. What's your opinion on him? On Woodrow Wilson or The Cynical Historian? Cynical Historian, he's good. He's very well-read historian. I have the pleasure of being friends with him, and having this back and forth with him is pretty fun. He's way better read than I am. And yet he, I think he's a little bit to my right, but most people are. So that's okay. As for Woodrow Wilson he's a mixed bag. Now, you see, I can understand why Cypher doesn't like him. Cypher's got a lot of things that he is saying that are correct. He doesn't like the fact that the United States, that under Woodrow Wilson, there was a lot of foreign intervention. He was a blatant racist who resegregated the White House, and also, as a historian, put the seal of approval on a movie called The Birth of a Nation, which was an openly racist film that spread lies about the post movement, like the post Civil War America. That was basically like perfect, like completely false. So, and he segregated the staff at the White House again after it had been desegregated by Teddy Roosevelt. And so he was blatantly racist. He invaded countries for the purposes of basically retaining American hegemony in regions. He invaded the Dominican Republic when they elected a person he didn't like. He violated Mexico's territory he violated Mexico's territory on 2 separate occasions. One, when he was trying to catch early 20th century version of Chapo Guzman, who was named Pancho Villa, and he invaded northern Mexico with American troops without any consideration of the violation of Mexican territory. He also didn't like the way the government of Mexico was voting, so he conquered the city of Veracruz for several months, which was pretty shitty. So yeah, there's a lot to not like about him. Woodrow Wilson was, to some extent, though, a progressive president in some aspects. I haven't seen the part 2 that Cypher has released yet. I'm still... that's the part that I'm a little... I haven't seen yet, but he's done a lot of stuff he did a lot of stuff while he was president for workers' rights and for making America a country that is modern and in a lot of ways. And so I don't want to take those parts away from Woodrow Wilson, but definitely the nasty things he did is way outweighed by his good things are way outweighed by the horrible things that he did. All right. What are your thoughts on authoritarian socialism? I think that authoritarian socialists or tankies or Soviet-style communists are typically pretty hypocritical. So a lot of authoritarian socialists, or tankies as they're called today, they have this idea that communism and socialism and bring about the great future that Marx wrote about is something that you can do with just enough elbow grease. And by elbow grease, they usually mean blood. They do not believe, for people who have belief in socialism and equality, they seem to lack the belief that people are able to organize in a mutually beneficial order without the state forcing them to. And so really what a lot of authoritarian socialists seem to advocate for, is not so much for communism, but for basically a brutal dictatorship. Yeah, there you go. All right, so Phil Edwards, do you feel that the division in Canada between French and English, don't know the right term, Canadians, and are Trudeau's blunders such as answering English questions in French making this worse? So French-English relations are kind of at the quietest point they've ever been. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about French-English relations in Canada, like really, really, really fast. So Canada and Quebec specifically, but tensions between English and French people have been around since the English got Canada from the French in the 18th century. And it's gone through various phases. Like the people in Quebec wanted at different points to have a revolution against the British to get independence. They tried that in the 1850s and it failed. In early independent Canada, so like in the late 19th century, there was a lot of Quebecois who were for a movement of separating from becoming a republic and getting rid of the monarchy. But typically, Quebec nationalism in that period was very much like super, super religious and very xenophobic and very like regimented. They protested against getting involved in World War I, which makes sense. And then what really like kind of set it into set like the nationalist movement that a lot of people know into motion was the baby boomer generation, because the baby boomer generation went through a period called in the 50s called the quote unquote silent revolution, the silent revolt or something like that. The quiet revolution, that's it, the quiet revolution. And it was a Quebecois or the Quebecois baby boomers were way more radical than their parents. They weren't religious and they still wanted independence. They fought against Canada. They were very they were militant to the point where sometimes you had groups like the FLQ in the early 70s. But that movement, that baby boomer-led movement to separate Quebec from Canada, led to a high watermark in 1995 at the 1995 referendum. And when that failed, and when basically the leader of the separation campaign blamed brown people for the loss, the movement lost a lot of its sails. And at the moment in our parliament, the Separatist Party is very small, much smaller than it used to be. It basically, in 2011, the Separatist Party lost almost all of its seats. I think that was reduced down to 3. It has a bit more now, but still. It lost a lot of its seats. And now there are several Quebec nationalist political parties in the provincial side. So there's a lot of like small, like there's now a left-wing and a right-wing nationalist party. And then there's just the Parti Québécois, which is still pretty big, but it's, I guess it's like, Quebec is this province that really any sort of French separatism is going to come out of that. And it's sort of hit its high watermark in a lot of ways. And today, a lot of baby boomers, like baby boomer Quebecois people, have no interest in leaving because they know it would be suicide for them. And so Quebec nationalism is kind of on the down. It's on the downswing. So Trudeau speaking in French is sort of, Trudeau answering questions in French is actually, that's a pretty common thing here in Canada. Anybody running in federal politics who's not a conservative is going to make an effort to answer things in both English and French, because to be speaking too much in English will make the Quebecois people angry with them. And so that's fairly common. It comes up a lot in debates as well. If you watch during the federal election debates, often you'll have a French debate, but you'll also have other ones. Conservatives don't care because Quebecois don't vote conservative. What's on your shirt? This shirt? So this shirt is a limited run shirt that was put out by Feminist Frequency. So this is a Feminist Frequency shirt. That's it. It was like this limited run where they were making this like blue and pink 80s style Feminist Frequency t-shirt. And I was like, that's a nice shirt. I like Feminist Frequency. I'll buy it. And so I bought it. And now you can't get the shirt anymore, so it feels a little special. Do you think Britain should have more restrictive borders? I don't think anybody should have restrictive borders. I think restrictive borders are just a way to fuel racism and a way to exacerbate the problems of income inequality. Because if you make it harder and harder to move to different countries, then that means that capital is still super flexible, and that capital is still flexible, and yet labor is not. So companies can move to where wages are low, but workers can't move to where wages are high. And restricting borders in Britain or anywhere else is going to make that worse. All right. Any recommendations for overall histories of the United States for good overall? Depends upon what kind of reading you'd like to do. There's a textbook that I've taught out of now for 3 years. I taught U.S. history for 3 years in a row, and the textbook that I used for that was a book called "Give Me Liberty" by Eric Foner, which is a pretty good book. Eric Foner also has another book as well. Let me just find it right now. Eric Foner also edited a book that I'm trying to find for you, which is I'm trying to find it. Oh, no. All right, I can't find it right now. But Eric Foner has written another book, he edited a essay collection, which is sort of like a what's the state of the field? What's the state of the field right this moment? And that was that's basically like a really good book to read for that. I read it for my comps, but I read it a long time ago, so I forgot its title. Another really good book to read that would be pretty fun to do is reading the Howard Zinn People's History of the United States. There's two. There's one for pre and post 1945. They're both pretty good. They're a little out of date now because Eric Foner is a bit too dead to keep updating it. But or Howard Zinn, sorry, is a bit too dead to be updating it. But they're still pretty good. They tell a lot of the history that you probably didn't know. Lies My History Teacher Told Me is another really good American history text that will be a pretty good reading. So I'd recommend those ones, depending upon how much money you have, because I know the Give Me Liberty textbook is really big and costs a lot of money. Ace asks, what's the video about today? I think you already got told that it was about Disney. So you're good on that front. What about Alberta's movement to join the United States? It's never been of any significant size. It's like, I would probably say that like any like Western separatist movements peaked maybe in the 70s, and even then they were really small. They're like groups like the Alaskan Separatist Party. Like nobody takes it seriously. What time is it in Canada? It's currently 1:23 p.m. That's in the East Coast, or in the East. So Canada has four time zones, I believe. So there's so it ranges. So the time in Canada is everything from half an hour from now. So there's in like Newfoundland, they have a time zone that's half an hour in the future from Eastern time. So it's 1:54 there, and Canada goes all the way to the Pacific coast with British Columbia, where there it would be 10:24 in the morning. So I know that, Fedor, I know that you're European, so but like these countries in America, they're gigantic and they have multiple time zones, and it's crazy. All right. Spartan 101, I think I remember you. Do you see any potential superstates forming in the near future, or do you think that cities and megacities will evolve to near self-sustainable, that national boundaries are essentially obsolete? I do think that the way that states work now are probably going to stay for at least a while, because the thing about city states is that, yeah, while there's a lot of people talking about how city states are really successful and that they're always going to be pushing for separation, but the thing is the states have, like the governments right now have the militaries. and have like an international world order that makes sure that borders don't change any more than, you know, neoliberal interests want them to. And so even though there are like, you know, massive chunks of the planet that people are emptying out, and so that's like, that's something that I'm a little concerned, or, you know, that that's happening. It's part, we're urbanizing very quickly, which is fine. Actually, it's probably better than living in the country. The problem, though, is that violence will be used. I think that I should probably frame this into some sort of answer, which is that until automation, specifically the way that our economics changes, where things like the state start to become less and less relevant, when they start fading away, that's when I could see states breaking apart. But I don't see, I see too much conservative resistance to superstates. It seems that whenever you talk about doing something like that, it's just rife with conspiracy theories and insanity, and it just seems to be not tenable. Be nice, though. Think that fewer bigger countries would be, that could solve their problems without going to war would be so much nicer. Do you think that after 68 years of separation, North and South Korea joined forces for the Olympics? Didn't they say they're already doing that? They're marching under a single flag, but I think that's about it. I don't think they're, I don't know if they're not saying the same like delegations or anything like that. Was universal basic income mentioned? I'm not sure what you mean. Like, did it come up in the stream? Did it come up at all? I must, Fedor, send me the context of what this question about universal basic income is. When did you start leaning towards libertarian socialism? I think for the longest time, I was basically a social democrat, a democratic socialist, whatever you want to call it. I was a dipper, as Canadians would know. I was a dipper through okay. I became a person introduced to politics at a very young age. Pretty much 9/11 was when I got my like crash course introduction to politics. I started following the news pretty much ever since. And that includes you know, following the news, following politics, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really form a political identity separate from like my parents until I was in high school. Where like, you know, my parents are like center right, like, you know, suburban Ontarians. So like, you know, they vote liberal and conservative whenever they feel like it. Do you remember me from your latest streams? Yeah, I think I do. I don't remember what you said, but I think I remember the name. Anyways, when I went to high school and I found more about the NDP, I got into the NDP. That was the party that I first fell in love with. But then as I got older, got a little bit more radical, started trying to develop my own ideas. I'd probably say that I was like a full out like libertarian socialist, like in the like not in the anarchist sense, but in like, you know, a chill, like civil right heavy socialist, kind of democratic socialist person. Was probably what I was until about 2009. And it was around 2009 that when I found out, because I had started on YouTube in 2007, and back then the only anarchists who were on YouTube were ANCAPs. And so I thought that, and they didn't call themselves anarcho-capitalists, they just called themselves anarchists. So for the longest time, I was like, well, I'm very left-wing, so I can't be an anarchist, because the only type of anarchists that are out there are, like, anarchists are just, you know, right-wing, pro-free market people. Like, that's all that exists. And then I was like, that's not me. I don't believe in that. But then once I started to realize that, oh, there's like left-wing anarchists, when I was like, you could be an anarchist on left-wing, and then it all kind of fell apart to me. And ever since 2009, so I would have been about 20, is around the time when I like came out as a full-out anarchist. And I've pretty much been one ever since. I do remember you saying that I was a god. Thank you very much, Spartan 101. So, Encom Tom. Sorry, my throat is like destroyed. Encom Tom, I would say that 2009 or when I was about 20. Phil Edwards, what's your opinion on the X-Files? I haven't watched it as an adult, really. As a kid, when it was on the air, my dad used to watch it, and I used to watch it with him, and I used to find it scary. But I'm told that I should check it out sometimes. But it's also kind of outdated because conspiracy theories in the 90s were a little bit more banal. You know, they were about aliens and government cover-ups and stuff like that. But now, conspiracy theorists are usually these like radical right-wing people who say that like Obama is Satan and like the Jews and all that kind of crazy shit. So I think that conspiracy theory culture means a different thing today than it did in the 90s. And I don't think, even though the X-Files is around today because it got rebooted, I don't think it's doing very well because I don't think it works in today's context. Do you think the EU borders should be not open? I think they should be relatively open. Ooh, societies thrive when they have different types of people in their society. More people means more labor, more like people trying to get a life. Like, I think that there's a false zero-sum game that a lot of reactionary right-wing people get into when they I'm talking about borders, and I think that it's a false dichotomy. What's your favorite anime? I'm not really super into anime. Like, I was probably like peak into anime around like 2000, 2001, that time period, 2002 maybe. And I'm not sure like where that went. Like, I just kind of got out of it. I didn't think it was all that good. I don't think the stories are all that compelling for the most part. Like, but then again, I was watching like Gundam Wing and Dragon Ball Z, so like obviously I wasn't into the quote unquote the good stuff. So I don't know. I just don't follow it. I like Akira. I like. I liked Ghost in the Shell. I like the movie Pat Labor, but like not that much. What do you believe about overpopulation? Will we stop at 12 billion people? We might. If we didn't eat meat, we could actually probably feed that many people pretty easily. It's just the problem of right now. It's the meat consumption that's making it unsustainable. 12 billion people, though, does seem about right because there's a population explosion set to happen in West Africa over the next few decades. So while China and India are slowing down because they're industrializing and they're coming around on things, West Africa is going through a huge baby boom explosion right now. So there's a point, I think, in the mid-21st century where it's predicted that the most commonly spoken language on Earth is going to be French, which I think is kind of cool. But so French actually might become the lingua franca again, which would be interesting. But that's in the far future. That's probably about the time that I'm going to die. Pending I don't live forever. But 2050s, 2060s, 2070s is about the time that I'm expected to go. So, you know, that's probably around the time that French will become the most spoken language on Earth, and I will be very, very old. Hopefully we'll be able to make meat in vats so that we don't have to give up meat in order to feed everybody. That's my hope. All right. Any thoughts on? Oh, so you just want me to know about universal basic income? I think the universal basic income would be a effective band-aid for the issues of inequality today. The problems that they're like, the thing is that there's a lot of people who are selling universal basic income as like a panacea solution to all of the issues of automation today. And I don't think they will be. I think that we have to consider greatly the limits that will come with our. So universal basic income has some drawbacks. I think that the benefits will outweigh the drawbacks, but for some reason, in a lot of circles, it's considered gauche to not even address or to address some of these issues. And some of the issues are, one, living standards are different in different places. Hello, Shiloh Highland. Living standards are different in different places and at different levels of urban development. And if universal basic income doesn't adapt to that, doesn't adapt to the fact that it's more expensive to live in cities than it is in the country, for example, you're going to see a lot of rural poor, which I think will be unfair. Two, if we have universal basic income and we use that to turn around and get rid of a lot of our to make work even more precarious, then there's going to be issues of having that having our labor as the bargaining chip, you know. So like today, in some situations, not many situations, striking can still be a tool used to prevent the abuse of workers. And if we lose our ability to work, then there's really no purpose in us in the liberal mindset. And that could be very dangerous. They could do anything for us. So that's the second problem with that will come up with universal basic income. The third is equity versus equality. There are needs that require extra cash that are right now covered by the fact that we have multiple different types of social safety nets. We have things for unemployment, we have things for disability, we have things for that. And a lot of the people who are proponents for UBI want to blend it all together into one thing, which, in my opinion, would be problematic because some people need more resources because they have disabilities or they have extra needs or something like that. And so there's a lot to consider there. And the more bureaucracy you build up around it, the less it becomes a useful thing. Because, part of what's supposed to make universal basic income so useful is that it gets rid of a lot of the bureaucracy that's assigned to means-tested type programs. So there's a lot to consider. And even though I said all those negative things about UBI, I still think that it would probably be better in the long term for humanity. I mean, getting rid of capitalism would be the best thing to do in the long term. But if UBI is the way that we have to transition to that, then fine. The stream is going to go until 2 o'clock, so another 20 minutes. It's the hour before a New Step Back video comes out. A good example of a potential libertarian socialist country. Oh, Soraya, are you talking about oh gosh, that Syrian? I don't know. I don't know that group. I'm very sorry. I know that. I know that that's a thing that comes up, but I think there's another one in Syria that's touted as like a libertarian socialist country, but I'm not sure what it is right now. I don't have the details to speak to that with any confidence. Convince me of your leftist anarchy viewpoints. All right, lay out the mindset of libertarian socialism. Okay. So in my fundamental concept of the way the world should work is that there's nothing that really merits anybody to be in a position where they should want anything, especially in the way the world is today. We're at a point of technological development and industrial expansion where everybody in the world should be able to have most of the things they need in a society. And if we're not there, we're very close. And so I don't see it as ethical in a situation where everybody can have pretty much everything they want, that we have people who don't have things. And in many ways, I don't see the value of giving somebody more resources than another person because they happen to get lucky or they happen to do something that made a lot of money. I don't think that really makes sense in my head. I have also, as an anarchist, anarchists at their core have a philosophical objection to hierarchy, especially, or hierarchy that can't justify itself. So if I have a hierarchy, if I have like a 2-year-old child that I grab and pull out of traffic, that's a justified hierarchy. I know the dangers of traffic. That child does not. But at the core of, I think, all left-wing, and if they were, introspective enough, anarchist philosophy, is that skepticism of hierarchy. Because it manifests itself both in capitalism, where why does this person have, like, if you start to interrogate these hierarchies and relationships, you start to find that you can probably find alternatives. And so I would probably say that I would want to find alternatives to hierarchical, non-consensual ways of running the world. And when you start looking for those, your answers start looking very anarchist and very communist, because you start realizing that, well, capitalism isn't exactly the fairest and most democratic way to distribute resources with the least amount of hierarchy, and the state definitely isn't either. But then it's about where your solutions are, about what the situation, like, then it's about which way you see the world working after you come to that realization that hierarchy should be questioned and that unjust hierarchy should be removed or replaced, if at all possible. And I think that the solution you come to that is very individual to a lot of people. And I think that's why there's so much infighting in leftist circles. And that's the core. It's basically that you think that everybody should be treated fairly, and that nobody should be able to force anybody else to do anything in a coercive fashion if there's not a good reason for it. You take that to its logical extreme and you have anarchist communism. All right. I heavily recommend the anime Psycho-Pass, which I thought would be more popular since it examines the effect of societal perceptions on the likelihood of someone committing crimes. That'd be interesting. Do YouTubers watch other YouTubers? Yes. Not as much as you'd think. You'd think that YouTube creators would spend a lot of time watching YouTube, but I don't think I watch as much YouTube as a lot of people do. All right. Does Star Trek not have UBI? Star Trek does not have UBI. Star Trek is a post-scarcity society. Star Trek, there is no money. Money is not even a concept. They find money to be a foreign thought. There's even a scene in Star Trek First Contact where Captain Picard says that we don't work for money, we work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity. And I think that that's an ideal future. I think money is a very dangerous concept that leads to a lot of the problems in the world. And I think that, yeah, if we can find a way to get rid of it, that'll be better. On the lighter side, I imagine UBI would slowly kill off handouts argument as a viable strategy for capitalists. That's true. Would you rather be a communist or a fascist? Oh, God. At least in a communist system, if I could, like, get myself into a position of being like a local commissar or something that I could at least make things better where I am. But fascist system is like about the systematic extermination of people who don't look like you, which is way worse. Do you prevent violence and anarchy without systems such as democracy to make decisions? Who will be the police? Whew. All right. So, violence and antisocial behavior in an anarchist society is something that has a lot of thought put behind it. There's a lot of ideas about alternative ways to run justice, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. I don't know. The thing is that I don't think anyone's particular answer is going to satisfy anybody in any capacity. I don't even know if there's an answer that I like completely, but there are a few things that could go down, which is one, a lot of crime that we consider crime isn't really a crime. In a society that doesn't have property, in a society that doesn't have money, property crimes aren't really a thing. There is, of course, the violation and terror involved in destroying somebody's home or something like that, which that is an antisocial crime. But what do you do about that behavior? And the current solution is to keep people in line, to put the fear of doing the crime with the punishment of being locked in a cage for a long time, which doesn't really do much, in my opinion. It doesn't seem to work. We still have crime. And we still have crime. We still do that. It's just that we're in a context now where that's the way things are. And so I would look at solutions. Hello, Doughboy DeVito. I would like to look for solutions to crime or violent and antisocial behavior that are based on remediating the situation. And there are some attempts to do these kinds of things. They're called restorative justice, while the system we have now is called retributive justice. And the idea behind it is that if somebody commits a crime, instead of locking them away and trying to get revenge, you are trying to get to the root as to what caused the crime to happen in the first place and address and solve that problem. If somebody abuses their spouse, you can find the misogynistic and dangerous roots that led to that situation being caused. And then you can find ways to remediate and to find ways to fix or at least try to make up for what happened, and also try to find ways to rehabilitate the person who did it. And that could involve, therapy. It could involve community service. It could involve a whole lot of things. Then there are a few people who usually have severe mental illness who, this is like the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world, whom they might need to be kept separated from society. And I mean, just because an anarchist society doesn't have a government doesn't mean it doesn't have a society. And in that case, I would have something that would be kind of like a place to keep people who are like literal threats to society away from everybody. But you don't need to have these brutal, horrible places. They could just be places where you can't get out. And it's not like you need to make Alcatraz. You can make something like the Nordic prisons, for example, which are just kind of selective, they're communities that you just can't get out of, which you're not, hopefully you'd see them that these are people who are just very, very ill, they'd be like mental health facilities for people who are dangerous. I'd hope. Community watches and things like that would also be pretty useful. Was that what John Lennon imagined? Yeah, I think one time somebody asked me what my political ideology was in a video for my 1,000 subscriber Q&A, like ages ago. And I said in that video that John Lennon's Imagine is basically my political philosophy outlined in a song. So I don't know if that's what John Lennon thought, because he's too dead to comment on it right now. But, you know. All right. So have you ever heard of an 80s and 90s band called Fishbone? No, I haven't. Sorry. What's the story, Fishbone? I don't even know. Did Americans have that show, Wishbone? Where the Jack Russell Terrier goes into famous novels? Even if it did, I think that I might be aging myself by mentioning that show, because that was a long time ago. Safe to say you're in favor of shutting down Guantanamo Bay. Those Nordic communities don't punish violent criminals enough, in my opinion. Wasn't Norway Bomber Guy complaining that he only had a PS2 to play? I think it's a different way. I think that the Girth Acts, I think that you're still seeing things from a different point of view. And I think that this is the big transition that we'd have to make, that gets out of the sort of medieval like state mentality, which is that we should not see the problem. The problem is antisocial behavior. It's violence of people towards other people. And you have to get out of the emotional space of seeing what to do about antisocial behavior as, I need to satisfy my emotional need for revenge. And what you need to do is see more as what went wrong to make this situation happen. What happened to result in this person hurting this person, killing these people? Even in the case of Anders Breivik, though, and in the situation that he's in, one, the guy is obviously a psychopath. And yeah, he probably should be kept pretty separate from society for a while he thinks over what he did. Two, that was a very obvious situation in which we really needed to interrogate the reasons why there was someone like Anders Breivik existing in the world. What was the context that this person lived in that caused him to get to a point where he thought that he could murder 70 plus teenagers and be fine with it? What kind of racist rhetoric, what kind of dangerous ideologies was he being fed through media, through culture, to make him do that? And I think that if we take violent criminal situations, all violence, all crime, and we investigate each case to see what broke apart to cause this crime to happen, and then try to figure out how to fix that, that's where crime should be. And I think that that would result in the long term in a better overall solution to, or at least like a way to make this kind of stuff disappear, instead of having a system that's based on feeding people's emotional need for revenge by saying, you did this, we're going to lock you in a place where you're going to become an even worse criminal for a bajillion gazillion years, so that you get to not contribute to your society ever again. You just get to live in inhumane conditions where you're going to be brutalized, raped, threatened, and sometimes forced to do slave labor for sometimes the rest of your life. And I don't see how that solves anything. I don't see how that makes anything better. All it does is attempt to satisfy someone's need for revenge. And I don't think revenge is something that anybody should be indulging. That was a very, very long rant. I am sorry. Do we know that Jesus and Buddha existed? I think so. I think we're reasonably sure, at least as reasonably sure as we can be, given the time difference. Like, Jesus' existence is as certain as we are of a lot of people existing over 2,000 years ago. And the Buddha was dead 1,000 years when Jesus was born. And so I think we have a relatively good idea that these people existed in some capacity, but we just don't have the data to, like, we don't have the same kind of standard of evidence as people who, like, are alive, 100 years ago, for example. All right, so Wait a Video. The thing about Contra's violence video is that I do disagree with her on some points. Nothing extreme, but I do think that she and some people who have this like cynical, nihilistic idea that like, oh, violence is just kind of part of is baked into the human experience, and we just kind of we cathartically enjoy it. I feel like it's more contextual than these people let on. I think that there's a lot of people who think that this is some sort of essential part of our nature, when I do think that it can be taken out of us. It's a cultural thing. It's a social construct, as the right will get scared about. You can show anything you want to your less left friends. What do you all right. We've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to try to do as many rapid fiery type things as I can do. My throat is very, very sore, or very, very dry, because I didn't get myself a glass of water before doing this, which was a dumb thing on my end. The Israel video is coming. I can tell you that the Israel video, I'm working on it now, actually. I have to write it before I go into the YouTube space on the 16th. So I'm working on the Israel video right now. And it is going to come out on March 22nd. So the Israel video comes out on March 22nd, if that helps. Are you going to do any more videos on the Cold War? Yes. I have a Cold War adjacent video that comes out next week. How did you get together with your wife? OkCupid. I got myself an OkCupid profile when I moved from Quebec to Ontario to go to grad school. I got myself an OkCupid account because I didn't know anybody and I wanted to start dating, and we met on there and just went from there. Nothing too fancy. Really, if you want to go out and meet somebody, just try to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be around people who have mutual interests. It's hard to talk to somebody if you don't know what to talk to them about, but, if you have a pre-constructed conversation topic, you're good. So that's my dating advice, for what it's worth, is go out and do things with other people who have similar interests to you, and it'll happen. Sit in your room and write angry tweets at feminists on Twitter, and it won't happen. All right, I think that we are getting to the end. Sorry, Hannibal Lukey. I would love to answer that, but we have like seconds, and I don't have seconds to answer something about Myanmar. Try to save that one for next week. So I'm going to, the video is going to come out in just a second. Here's the link. But I'll see you guys. If you guys watch So That Happened, hopefully we'll see you this Sunday. If not, I will see y'all I'll see you all on Tuesday or next Thursday. Bam. There's the video. You guys can watch it a whole minute early. Peace out, friends. Take care.